Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. I think we can start as soon as the counter stops running up so quickly. So we give another few seconds for people to join, and then we can get started with the first VPHi Day. So the agenda of today will be a short introduction to the VPH in general. There will be a short introduction by Thierry Marchal of the Avicenna Alliance. And then the activities of the Institute will be explained to you in 3 big blocks according to the 3 working groups of the Alliance and the Institute. After that, there will be a presentation on the student activities, and then Martina Contin, our manager, will talk about the communication and engagement. And then the time that remains is for questions that you might have that have not been answered today. So at the start, I would also like to thank Martina for coming up with the idea and for organizing and putting everything together. I think it's a very successful first edition. If we look at the numbers, more than 100 people. I don't think we had really expected this, but we're very happy to have you all here. So without further ado, a very brief introduction into the VPHi. And let me start by the latest conference that we had last year. Due to COVID, of course, we had to rethink a little bit, or the organizers at INRIA had to rethink a little bit. Then we went for a fully online option, and it went actually very well, like very well. We had over 600 registered participants, of which over a quarter were master and PhD students. It also allowed us to gain a lot of new members. And there were people from medical profession, from industry, from regulators. So the mix that the VPHi conference has become known for was there. So with this whole group of new people that registered, we thought, well, maybe we need to explain something about what we are doing. We need to explain people how they can participate in the activities of the Institute. And another thing that has recently happened is that this month, 3 European projects kicked off, which have as an assignment to accelerate the uptake of computer simulations for testing medicines and medical devices. And 4 projects kicked off, and in 3 of these projects, the VPH Institute is a partner, where our role is to do communication and dissemination and stakeholder outreach. So that means that now there's also the means to further intensify and speed up the activities that will be described to you today. And so it's even more important that you can participate, and that we explain to you how we would like you to help us help the community. So very rapidly, what is VPH? Not going into the details of why this is called a virtual physiological human, but just to say that this is a way to describe physiology-based computer modeling and simulation, or in another word, in silico medicine is also often used as a descriptor of what we do. And whereas we started from more mechanistic-based modeling, the community is actually using the whole spectrum of in silico methods. And so that means not only all technologies, all types of input, all types of length scales, organ systems, and all types of medical treatment strategies, so devices, drugs, and advanced therapies. The way this is being done, or the way you can look at in silico medicine, is from a patient's perspective, from a doctor's perspective, like was developed in the roadmap of the digital patient, and from an industry or a research perspective as an in silico clinical trial, also something that was developed in the most recent roadmap that the VPHi contributed to. Now, what is the aim of the activities of the VPH Institute? It is to, on the one hand, establish the whole pathway from the computer screen to the patient. So what if our researchers develop something that is actually, at a stage that it can be translated? So we want to make sure that the whole pathway is ready and developed. And we also want to be the go-to organization for all issues related to in silico medicine. If somebody in the commission has a question on what models can be used to develop a clinical trial for vaccines for COVID, well, then we'd like them to get in touch with us, and that is what is more and more happening. So these are the two core things that we want to do. And how do we want to achieve that? Well, on the one hand, we do the traditional scientific society things like focusing on the science, giving it a platform in the summer school, and the conferences, doing communication and dissemination of the results that we obtain. But then VPHi is also involved in policy, in funding, setting standards, sharing, improving quality of the things that we do, and stakeholder outreach and involvement. And you will see over the course of the next 2 hours how these goals are actually translated into specific activities. Now, what is the community? The community is something that sits in between your technical implementation, the user, the individual user of in silico technologies, and then the higher levels of where the policies are, the incentives, the funding. A community is something that, you know, brings people together so that we can then look at the top of the pyramid and try to drive policies and create incentives. Now, just as a final slide, what you are going to hear are a lot of things, and for some of you, these activities, especially related to the more policy-related activities, might seem a bit far from your bed, might also be a bit daunting because you have no experience. But what attracted me, if I may add a little personal note, what attracted me to the society in the beginning was the opportunity to participate in the rolling out of this whole path from the computer screen to the patient. And I made that choice to really start engaging with the Institute when I was just started my own research group. So I did not have expertise with policy, with lobbying, with politics. I did not have a big research group or lots of funding. I did not have my own EU project. I did not do any translation of any product. And I did certainly not have a model that was ready to go into clinic. So I had none of that, but I had interest. I wanted to understand how this would work, that if I was going to, when I was going to develop my science and I was going to create something that actually could make it to the clinic, then I wanted to make sure that I had also contributed in realizing the pathway to take it there. And I was interested in how you actually bring something from the computer screen to the patient. Because in the end, as engineers, that's what you want to do. You want to have an application, you want to make somebody's life better. And I was definitely willing to learn the things that I didn't know anything about. And so I started engaging. With the Institute, looking at, or I participated in the Policy Affairs working group. That was the original working group where we did work on policies. And that then gradually developed with making the official partnership with industry in the Avicenna Alliance. This then extended into the 3 working groups that you will see later on. And by participating in these activities, my knowledge also grew. And so that is what we actually would like to offer to you today. That is the perspective on how you can participate and where we would, in what specific areas we think we need help. And we think that just having enthusiastic people there with a passion for in silico medicine would make a world of difference. So that is the very short introduction. And I now give the floor to Thierry Majal, who will introduce the Avicenna Alliance.
Thank you. Let me share my screen, and thank you very much, Elise, for this kind introduction. Thank you to all of you to participate today. I think that you are in an important place. Just want to echo what Elise was saying. Maybe you don't know to do many things, but for sure you know that what you are doing, this kind of in silico approach, using computer model to model the human body, to model healthcare, is very important. And for sure you know that you cannot do it alone. That's the goal of this VPHi, this Avicenna Alliance and so on, because if we are joining force, for sure we can change the world. And I know that this is very ambitious, but this is truly what we are doing today. And this is globally recognized. For example, the COVID crisis, we are showing with the impact of in silico, or we can really make a big difference. And there was a COVID day during the VPH conference in 2020 about that. So I'm Thierry Marchal. I'm the Secretary General of the Avicenna Alliance. And you see that together with the Avicenna Alliance are coming quite a lot of title over there. The sense that we are member of the e-health stakeholder group, member of the EMA, the European Medicine Agency stakeholder group. This is showing how influential we are becoming today. And also for my primary activity, I'm the program director for healthcare solution at ANSYS. Some of you may wonder, okay, Avicenna, what a bad marketing name over there. Or is it a kind of acronym for a European project? Not at all. This is a real person who was living 1,000 years ago and who was coming with the idea that you need to have some kind of control group in order to validate different kind of treatment. And to some extent, we are still doing that today. So that's why we can change elements. We can be inspired by Avicenna when he was changing the situation. That's why the Avicenna Alliance is a kind of global organization. By global, I mean that we have some member in Asia, in Europe, in North America. We have some member from the industry, from a regulator like observing member and academic people. We have some member from the pharma industry, the software industry, the medical device, and even the cosmetics industry. Joining force for one goal in order to focus on this kind of in-situ approach. We've been created at the request of the European Commission. And our route are, just like was suggested by Lise, coming especially from the Virtual Physiological Human initiative some time ago. Our mission, like many, is to accelerate medical innovation. Like many, to ensure safe and affordable and cost-efficient healthcare. But we are the only one to exclusively focus our activity on the in-situ approach across the board for all of the different healthcare activity. And this kind of vision was inspiring quite a lot of members. Of course, all the VPHi members are members of the Avicenna Alliance, but also several industrial members. You can see large medical device company like Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Stryker, and so on. Large pharma company like Alexion, like Johnson & Johnson, Cipla, and so on. Large software company like Hexagon, Dassault, ANSYS, and others. So all of them realize that we need to join force in order to make this a bigger achievement to change the world. So how are we working? So in fact, the Avicenna Alliance is split 50% into the VPH Institute and the industrial representation. That means that the decisions are made at the same level by these two elements. Then below that, in order to be quite active, we've created 3 working groups that I can quickly illustrate, and that will be detailed by the working group leaders. Emmanuel Voisin is leading the policy development working group, just to make sure that we are bringing to the agenda of the policy maker and the regulator the fact that in-situ is something very important, and vice versa, that she's bringing back to the members what are the key interests from the alliance and from the authority. Marcus is making sure by leading the international working group that this is not something that we are doing just in Europe, that we are changing the world in Europe or Europe and US, but across the world. And we are working with all the agencies. We need to elevate everybody along this line. And Lise, you know her very, very well. She's making sure that we are bridging the gap between the academic, the industry, the regulator, but also when there are some new funding for new projects, we are making sure that the name of in-situ, digital twin and so on, appear over there. Well, below this kind of different working group, there were more and more topics of interest. People, members from VPHi, from the industry are coming to say, okay, hey, you know, we need to work better with notified body. We need to develop the good simulation practice. We need to have some certified materials or define a position between AI and healthcare. Others are even coming to us, like EMA, saying, okay, but we need to work together. So we've created some kind of task force. This is really the core of the Avicenna, where we are doing this kind of heavy lifting. What are we doing over there? Is just to make sure that we can define what is necessary. And we are doing that through publication, to commenting to some question coming from the parliament, from a different kind of authority, with the way to formally recognize all the authors over there. A fantastic way to be visible not just in a journal, which is extremely important, but also to be recognized by different authority, by the different key members. Well, you say, okay, this is just publishing. Yeah, it could be bigger than that. And Lee's right when I'm showing that, because we can go to senator, like meeting with Taj Cochrane, and Marcus will present that. Meeting in front of the key member of the European Parliament to explain what is the direction. Meeting with some Congress and giving some kind of additional congressional briefing to people. We need to educate all these people. And the goal over there is not just to take some nice picture, but look at one of the recent achievements here. The European Union was reformatting this kind of strategy for the pharma industry. We've been made aware of that through our consultant RPP, continuously working on them. And because of our position, we've been asked to say, okay, can you comment on that? What is important for the future of the pharma strategy in Europe? And we were stressing the importance of computational model and simulation, HPC, the need to have the right infrastructure. Look at that. Those are some extracts coming directly from the communication, official communication from Europe, where they are stressing the importance of digital solution, mentioning AI, HPC, but also computational model and simulation as a way to predict what will happen in terms of pathology. That's a way to change the world. And they were suggesting that in order to help us, we need to make sure that the right IT infrastructure is there. But what's the point for you? Why to do all these kind of things? Well, as I said, as a member of VPHi, you can be participating to all our different activities. For a small fraction of your time, you can truly become an influencer, making sure that our dream to make sure that we are taking advantage of simulation is becoming a reality, a large-scale adoption of in situ method. This is a fantastic way to network with the regulator around the world, in your country, wherever you are in the world, but also with industry leader, with startup which are a pioneer. We need to shake hands between all the different people to make sure that this is happening. This is a unique opportunity to be visible, either as a speaker representing the alliance, representing the institute, speaking in our name, but also as a co-author of all these kind of very influential communication, which are becoming some kind of reference. This is a way to acquire more knowledge, and Liz was saying that she was acquiring quite a lot of knowledge by simply working side by side with all these people, both in the industry and in the academic world, not mentioning the regulator. And therefore, by doing all of that, we are shaping the future. The future is about digitalization of healthcare. You might be wondering how to do that. This is the right place to do it, and this is not a huge investment. So from now, I think that we will detail all the different working groups that we've got. All the working group leaders are here, and hopefully to give you a better idea. And of course, any question, just let us know.
Thank you, Thierry. So I will start by continuing, or by starting with the Research and Technology Working Group, if I can find my slides. Okay. So first, maybe with the mission of the Research and Technology Working Group, it's one of the 3 working groups of the Alliance. This is the one that is led by the VPH Institute, because of its obvious link also to research and development of the science. The Research and Technology Working Group seeks to bridge the missing mile between basic research and the commercialization of products, and that does that by bringing together the members from the academic side and the industry side. And what we want to do when we have these people together is identify common technology challenges, common issues that we have, common ways that we could advance the field for, through mutual cooperation and for mutual benefit. And one of the key goals of this group is also ensuring that there is sufficient funding for the science by academics and by industry. And in this case, it's focusing a lot on the European Framework Program on Horizon Europe. And then it also wants to create links between the VPH membership and the Avicenna industry members, so that when we are writing these projects which have a translational aim, that we easily find the right partners. So that is the mission of the Research and Technology Working Group. Now it has 4 core activities. So for the 4 activities, the 4 core task forces are the AI and Silico task force, the Horizon Europe task force, and then a task force on the clinical community outreach, which will be presented by Claudio, and one on the certified materials library or the community challenge, which will be presented by Nele in more detail. So for the first two, I will give you a brief introduction and what the aim is and what the activities are. So there's first of all the AI in Silico task force. For now, it's still led by me, but if you feel that this is something that you want to engage in, there is a vacancy for that position. The activities there started or were sparked by the observation that in a lot of EU documents preparing Horizon Europe, there was a lot of mention of artificial intelligence. And suddenly everything that was in Silico became artificial intelligence. And so there was the fear, the realistic fear that anything else besides AI would take a second place and would be forgotten in calls and in other documents. So that is why we are making this paper to really explain that AI is part of the in silico spectrum, but there is much more on that in silico spectrum than only AI or the machine learning data-driven materials. So that is why we are now really close to finalizing the white paper to detail that role. And we have been communicating already through several ways to the Commission that there is more to in silico than AI. And this has, as you have seen in what Thierry has presented, this has taken hold. Now we see in documents that AI is mentioned and computer modeling and simulation is mentioned separately. So something is starting to grow. While we were writing the white paper, there were a number of surveys of consultations by the European Commission, and one of these was on AI and on data, on the data space. And so a summary of our white paper was already submitted to the Commission during in response to such a survey. Now, what we're currently doing is wrapping up this white paper, and then what we will be doing is designing or thinking about follow-up activities for this white paper. We already have an invitation to go to the Commission and have a meeting with a few people in DG Connect, even just when they heard that we were writing this white paper, because they want to learn and they want to make sure that they do this, or that they get the whole spectrum. And what the actual goal is to establish the VPHi or the Alliance as an ideal partner for the Commission when it comes to talking to people who have the technical background to talk about in silico technologies in the widest sense of the word, but also have the knowledge on the biological applications, on the pathophysiological cases, and who have the links to the clinics. So who can actually within healthcare talk both on application and on technology. So this is quite a broad goal, but we will do that through follow-up activities to the white paper, but then also asking for specific follow-up meetings with specific people within the Commission to explain this further. Another important part there is to identify the policy asks and other kinds of activities related to AI. Because there is a consultation, there is the creation of the European Health Data Space that is ongoing. And so when these consultations come out, the Commission seeks input from the field. And that is also something that we want to do with this task force, answer to these or give input to these public consultations. If that requires additional short position papers, then these will be written. Now, this is not something that us as scientists or us as members of industry have to do by ourselves. We are guided here by a policy company, RPP, called RPP, and they follow up on these policy initiatives. They follow up on these consultations, and they let us know when things are of importance, when input is required, and what sort of input needs to be given. And they help us shape these things. So this is not something that we just have to do by ourselves. This is something where we're guided. And then with the help of RPP, we can find the right middle ground between doing everything that we could possibly think of, or doing the things that we believe where we can make a difference, and where the Alliance and the Institute can really do something that other organizations cannot. So this is what we aim to do with the AI task force. Another one that is recently created, and that also still has a leadership position that can be filled in, is the Horizon Europe Task Force, where we want to maintain and further build on the links that we currently have with the European Commission. We have built up over the years, starting from the very, very beginning, good relationships with DG Connect. We also now have good relationships with DG RTD. So those are the two main Directorate Generals that are involved in writing calls for funding of projects that are funding our research. Now, from the very beginning, still in the time of the Policy Affairs Working Group within the VPHi Day, in Framework Program 7 in Horizon 2020, we've been working on writing calls, suggesting topics, and these have been looked at. These have been picked up by the Commission, and so there has been a sustained funding after the initial VPHi stream ended. There has been continued funding for specific in silico projects, but also in silico has been taken up as a standard tool in many of the other projects where before it wasn't mentioned. So this is something that we want to continue with Horizon Europe. Just only recently, DG Connect and DG RTD organized a workshop where they had a wide group of people present, giving them input on the status and the challenges for the human digital twin, with the express intent of using that knowledge to translate that into future calls. And a lot of people from the Alliance and from the Institute were invited there as speakers. We are further going to engage more now also with other key stakeholders in PPP, so public-private partnership programs like FPA, like Medtech Europe, like COSIR, where the Alliance and the Institute can offer technical expertise on in silico-related subjects, and that way get involved in more of these PPPs where before we were not. So the activities for this specific task force are to develop specific call topics on subjects that are of interest to the membership, on the challenges that we have identified. It is to develop a communication strategy or to roll out the communication to the AA membership about upcoming relevant calls. And again, there we can also count on the work of the policy collaborators to do a mapping of the available funding, to follow that up and to do the communication. And to develop, as I mentioned at the beginning, we want to create this interaction between the scientific members or the academic members and the industry members. So develop this internal tool where we can promote interaction. So really an expression of interest portfolio from all the members that you can peruse through when you are thinking of writing a project. So from the very beginning, you can get started with the right partners. The two other task forces that will be mentioned, that will be presented by Claudio and Nele, are then the stakeholder engagement task forces, and specifically the ones for clinicians falls within the research and technology working group, where there is a large synergy also with the European projects that I earlier mentioned, and activities will be developed to inform these stakeholders about what in silico medicine is and to answer questions that they might have. And then in the same way, there is a certified materials library that also is being worked on. But I now think I should give the floor back to Martina so Nele and Claudio can present their task forces.
Thank you, Liz, for introducing our task force and for involving me in presenting the beginning of the work that we have started over the last year in order to build a stronger connection with the clinical world. My background is biomedical engineering. I come from the modeling, but I had the opportunity to work within a hospital of excellence, such as the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children, where we aim to translate the modeling activities directly to clinics. And for this reason, I have the opportunity to see that on daily basis the challenges and the opportunities at the same time of translating modeling capabilities to solve clinical questions. So with the rest of the board of directors and Liz, we decided to try to engage more with the clinical community and try to achieve let me check why the slides are not progressing. Sorry for that. Okay, and try to achieve what is the vision of the VPHi, which, as Lisbeth correctly says, translating from computer screen to the patient, the capability of the modeling. So, as it's clearly stated in the vision of the VPH Institute, we need to ensure that the principles of the in silico medicine are fully realized and used, which is the activities which are we are focusing on in clinic. So we saw a rising of clinical activities presented, for example, the last conference of the VPH, in which we really saw different sessions created from involving different clinical applications, from cardiac to cancer to neurology to vascular to lungs to liver. And I strongly invite you to check the book of abstract of the VPH in order to start understanding the flavor of all the translational works. Having said that, we started talking of really which are the actions that we have to take in trying to basically measuring the level of prevalence of usage of computer modeling and simulation in clinics, which goes way beyond what has been published or what has been presented at conferences. In fact, one of our the biggest challenges is actually trying to get visibility of the actual work that we do with clinicians and for clinicians, and in which we use modeling to solve clinical issues. So we decided to basically start implementing some actions. The first one is the survey that I will speak about in the next slides. Then the results of that survey will be very useful to start building a workshop which will involve mainly clinicians and modelers in order to analyze the results of the survey and identify the barriers and how we can overcome those. This will be functional to create a network between the modeling community, an even stronger network between not only modeling community and clinical collaborators, but also between in between different clinical centers. For example, we started working recently with the Boston Children's Hospital, in which we aim to exchange experiences of what is the problem and the opportunity of doing simulations for clinicians. And then ideally, the long-term vision is also trying to address and define a clinical standard of practice of using computational modeling and simulation in clinics. So I would like to give you a few more details about the first step, which is the clinical survey that we designed in order to take a snapshot of the current use of computer model and simulation. This will help really trying to understand how much these tools are actually used in clinics, and try to identify the barriers, try to also assess the level of confidence that clinicians have in using some of the tools that we design, and also gather demographic data of the clinical users of these tools, which is another important piece of information to have the full the full picture. So the design has been designed in collaboration with members of the VPH community, and we designed a survey which is made of 25 questions. The vast majority, 95% of them, are multiple choice, so it takes really 10 minutes. And just to give you a few examples of the questions, we want to investigate the level of awareness for some terms which are very familiar for our community, but might not be as familiar with the clinical community. We would like also to see which were the methodologies and tools which have been applied in clinical practice. So we listed some of the most common tools. As I mentioned before, we want to know quite directly whether they trust and how much they trust the results of the computer modeling and simulations that they use or they receive results from. And as I mentioned before, it's very important for us to understand which are the medical specialty in which modeling and simulation are used mostly at the time. Also, which are the centers, which are the positions associated to it, whether this is a curiosity which is more in the younger colleagues, younger clinical colleagues, or more experienced. So all this information will be very useful. And to date, we received almost just a bit less than 100 answers. We launched it just before Christmas, so I think it's worth it to work over the next months in order to increase the number of the answers. We received answers from just above 10 countries, not only Europe. This is not only a European initiative. And in fact, one of the most responsive is in the countries in the US. And to give you a sneak peek, really, to the results, which are really ongoing, so this will definitely change. But you can see how the majority of the reason why computer modeling and simulation have been used in according to our respondee is to plan interventions. But also quite interesting to date is they have been used quite a lot for teaching activities, which is something, for example, not necessarily expected at the beginning. And then this is, I apologize, it's quite small, but you can see that the multidisciplinarity of the groups which are working with and within clinical centers is increasing. There are biomedical engineering, computer scientists, data scientists. So this is again to have a practical idea that this is happening. This is already happening in clinics, and it might not be as emerging as much as we expect. So the real target now is getting more results. The deadline has been extended to the 15th of February. I see that there are more than 120 attendees. If just all of you are able to get 2 answers from your clinical colleagues, collaborators, or even people you know that they work, we can really arrive easily to 300 answers, and these will be very useful results, which will be shared obviously within the community. You find the link here on these slides, which I understand is not very easy to copy and paste, but you find an even easier link to in the homepage of the VPHi website. So I strongly invite you to get engaged, and I thank you for your help in advance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudio. Then we go to Nele now for the Certified Materials Library or the Community Challenge.
So indeed, I'd like to take some time to introduce to you the C4Bio, the Community Challenge Towards Consensus on Characterization of Biological Tissue. So it's an initiative that is part of the Research and Technology Working Group. And it's also, I'm a professor at KU Leuven in soft tissue biomechanics, but also involved in fiber. So that's a core facility at KU Leuven that's working on material characterization and also has quite a big role now in the C4Bio initiative. So if you go to the next slide, the title of the task force suggests that we are looking for a certified materials library or in other words, we're looking for a database of reliable biological tissue material properties for various types of biological tissues. And these properties should then be used in the in silico models. And obviously, the quality of the in silico model will also depend on the quality of the material properties that are being used. So the problem today, if you go to the next slide, is that if you scan through the literature looking for these parameters, you will observe a lot of variability in the results. And we all know that there's simply this intrinsic biological variability to biological tissues, but in this case, a large part of the variability is also due to the methodological variation that you can see between groups, between test methods and protocols. Because up to now, there's hardly any standardization on how to perform biological tissue property characterization. And so that's why it's virtually impossible to, at this point, already start to create such a database. So before we can start building up the database, step one is to reduce the variability in the experimental characterization methods. So that's why on the next slide, you can see the aim of our challenge. So it's to achieve community consensus regarding the testing protocols for material characterization of biological tissue, and then we can disseminate this consensus broadly also to the relevant standards bodies. And that will then make it possible to certify whether the material properties that are being used in an in silico model were obtained in the best possible manner, with test methods obviously that are available today. So the task force uses a broad definition of the concept of material properties. So these can be many types of physical properties like thermal or electrochemical. But here, as an entry point, we decided to focus on mechanical properties. This actually, amongst others, has currently simply to do with the expertise, academic expertise that's currently available in the task force. In the future, we definitely also plan to target other physical properties and attract the experts in those fields to support this. But so, regardless of the type of physical properties that we're trying to obtain, if you go to the next slide, we must realize that there's an entire workflow that we need to consider when we're looking at characterizing material properties. So it really starts at how the tissue is collected, how the tissue is being preserved in those cases that we cannot measure in vivo, and also apart from the testing itself, also how we then process the data and extract or optimize our raw data curves to find material properties. So there can be variation everywhere in the entire workflow. And then obviously, for example, for characterizing mechanical properties themselves, there is also a large variability of test methods that you can use, going from uniaxial to biaxial to triaxial methods. And we cannot tackle all of this at once, all these aspects or all these different test methods. So therefore, we decided to split the problem up into different testing campaigns and then to focus on single aspects of the testing or the workflow at a time. So in the next slide, you can see how we then split that up. So we have different test campaigns for every aspect. And within one testing campaign, you can always identify 4 steps. First step, if you click, is to quantify the variability in the test methods that are currently present in the literature. So here, the idea is to approach multiple expert labs, ask them to perform exactly the same test on exactly the same type of material, and then we ask them to do the test according to their preferred methodology. So if all the participants, if we then bring all the results together, we are able to quantify the methodological variability on top of the biological variability that is there. Then in a second phase, we can bring all the expert labs around the table and then ask them to together define a consensus methodology. So this is all the more reason to really limit the focus of a single testing campaign, because this will obviously be the most challenging part of the whole campaign, but of course the crucial one. And once the consensus has then been found, we can go back and redistribute material to all the expert labs and ask them to perform the test over again, but now according to the consensus methodology. And then we will be able to quantify to what extent we were able to reduce the methodological variability. So then we might have to iterate between steps 2 and 3, and finally we end up with a consensus methodology that we can then disseminate and distribute as broadly as possible, also then to the standards organizations. This process we should then repeat for all the different aspects. So at this point, we're currently in the middle of our pilot campaign. So the first testing campaign on uniaxial tensile testing of porcine aorta. So we realized that uniaxial tensile testing is not considered as the gold standard for mechanical testing of biological tissues. They are mostly anisotropic. So this is not, let's say, the preferred method, but it's still a strategic choice to start here, since many labs have a uniaxial tensile test bench, and since the method itself is also considered to still be relatively simple. So roughly speaking, if we cannot reach consensus on this methodology, well, then maybe we should think twice before we move to even more complex testing methods. So we will ask the participating expert labs, if you can click, to generate simple stress-strain curves, so one-dimensional data, and then extract certain numeric values from them. And as I said, it's a community effort, and it's really a worldwide effort. And on the next slide, you can see that we've managed to select a very nice distribution of participating expert labs from all over the world. And we're currently in the preparatory phase of phase 1. So on the next slide, you can see that at Fiber, our people, we are collecting all the material that will be sent to all of the participants. So in this case, sections of porcine aorta that are collected from the same strain and the same age and weight of animals, of course, to allow for as much standardization as possible. And on the other hand, also for comparison, we send 2 sheets of synthetic material that are prepared for us by the Spanish company De Artiker. And well, this is definitely quite a bit of logistics involved, since we will be sending all the material on dry ice to 25 locations all over the world next week. So it's an exciting week for us. And then on the next slide, you can see the rest of the timeline. So next week, we'll be sending all the samples. After 1 month, we expect all the participants to send in their results, their test results. And then 2 months later, we will organize the colloquium in which we will try to define this consensus methodology. All of this, of course, if FedEx and the virus work together with us. So, well, we are, as I said, we're in the pilot phase, but everything is on schedule. And if you can check the website on the next slide, you will always be able to, we will try to update it so that you can find more information on the campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nele. And Claudio, because this concludes the presentation of the Research and Technology Working Group. And I now like to pass the screen on to Emmanuel Voisin and Marco Vicciconti, who will talk about the Policy Affairs Working Group.
Hello, everyone. And first of all, I just wanted to check that you can see my screen. I'm going to present to you the Policy Development Working Group. Professor Marco Vicciconti will be talking mainly about the promotion of the good simulation practices, and I will cover all the other activities of the Policy Development Group. So first of all, just as a reminder, as Thierry Marchal said at the very beginning, the Policy Development Working Group really is there to create a policy framework around the simulation, well, computer and modeling and simulation, and also artificial intelligence. And we want to facilitate the large-scale development and use of these technologies so that we can speed up and also expedite the development of healthcare products, namely drugs and devices. We also want to foster innovation for the unmet medical need that are really crucial these days, and in particular for orphan products in rare diseases, and also for pediatric diseases. So at this point, our priorities currently are, as I said, the good simulation practices towards the policymakers in Europe. We also want to participate in the pharmaceutical strategy consultation. We've started last year and we will be continuing next year. And most importantly, we want to foster the interaction with competent authorities and through writing white papers and in particular position papers. So we do interact with all the information that comes from our members to the external world, and also by bringing to our members the information coming from outside. So our goal, of course, is really to work in an efficient manner. That is, we have created task forces that are more executing the strategy that the working group has decided to follow. And two of the new task forces that are currently being created are the Pharma Strategy Task Force and the Patient Engagement Task Force. So at this time, I'm going to develop a little bit the various policy development task forces that we have currently. So I'll leave aside for now the good simulation practice, which is an enormous piece of all the work we do. The reason being that we need to have a common practice in order to be able to promote and use computer modeling and simulation. And this will be covered by Professor Marco Viceconti. And I will speak mostly right now about the Notified Bodies Task Force and the EMA collaboration, unless Liz, you want to do it, because we are collaborating with your working group on this one.
I think they've heard me enough, so you go ahead.
So you don't want to, okay. So basically, in fact, I'd like to emphasize here the collaboration between working groups. That is very important because the policy development working group collaborates a lot with Liz, and you heard what the research and technology does. And also we collaborate with the international working group with markers that you will hear later on. And altogether, it's a huge amount of interaction among and between stakeholders, not only within the alliance, but with a large number of stakeholders outside of the alliance. And in order to achieve anything in promoting in silico medicine, the most important thing is to have many stakeholders around the table, including, but not only the regulators, the payers, and in Europe, there are HTA bodies, the clinicians, the key opinion leaders, the patients, of course, most importantly, and we'll talk about it. So all these stakeholders have a role to play, and they're really important in the promotion of in silico medicine. So after we speak about these three main task forces, I'd like to introduce a little bit the pharmaceutical strategy, which started last year with a response to the European Commission consultation, and that will cover also orphan, that is rare diseases, and pediatric medicine, and the patient engagement task force that is also of extreme importance, and that will cover again orphan and pediatric medicine. So let me go first of all briefly into the notified bodies task force. And this was created more than a year ago now. And the goal was to understand the landscape around the notified bodies, which approve medical devices, and identify the gaps and the challenges in using digital evidence to get medical devices approved in Europe. So we took initially contact with the head of Team MB, which is an association grouping all the notified bodies. And from there, we established guidance, and we started working with Team MB, and therefore with the notified bodies, in order to establish a strategic roadmap with a number of stakeholders in order to accept digital evidence for the approval of the notified bodies, for the CE marking and the approval also in the US, most importantly. We have written a position paper, and we have achieved a couple of significant activities during last year. And next year, well, this year, we're planning to really interact even more with the notified bodies and with industrial sponsors about all the in silico approaches for regulatory submission. And then, of course, we want to assist the notified bodies in their review process, which is the most important part of what they do for us, with implementation of a subject matter expert. But that is the plan for the future. So briefly, I won't go over this slide because Lise covered it, and in fact, this is a summary of what we do together. I just wanted here to stress the importance of the informal and formal meetings that take place with the regulators. And for example, Flora Muswamba is really instrumental in making things happen with her enthusiasm about in silico and the importance that she puts on this. And this is pretty new, because a number of years ago, when you would speak about in silico drug, or well, drug development, not device, but drug development, you would find in front of you a big wall of regulators saying, oh, no way, everything that's predictive has no value. You need to give me in vivo data and I'll be happy. And in fact, for the past few years, due to the mainly FDA to start with, and then EMA, due to their support, and even more, you know, that they're real champions for in silico medicine, then with them, we can make much more progress. And this is what the EMA Collaboration Task Force is about. I think it's extremely important. And as I said earlier, we are creating 2 new task forces, very important pharmaceutical strategy to support the European Commission new strategy. And in this task force, we'll have a member of industry leading, plus a member of academia from VPH. And under the patient engagement task force, we want to have the 3 pillars, namely academia, we have drug pharmaceutical industry, and we have the device industry. And between the 3 of them, we are covering most of the stakeholders who are really impacted by the patient engagement in silico medicine. So those 2 are being created. We are launching them very soon. And for now, we have a plan that needs to be approved and implemented by the leaders of those 2 task forces. And most importantly, as I said, we are going to cover also everything that is around rare diseases and pediatric development. So now I'd like to give the floor to Marco Conti, who is going to talk specifically about the good simulation practice task force that we have. And I'll be showing your slides, Marco.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good afternoon. A little bit of context. So about a year ago, within the VPH Institute and the Avicenna Alliance, we started to reflect about the opportunity to develop something we call a good simulation practice, by analogy with similar documents that are present in the context of biomedical research, such, for example, the good clinical practice or the good laboratory practice. Okay, these are generally guidelines that help the practitioner to perform, in this case, simulations in the best possible way and in a way that is accepted by the regulatory agency. Okay. The reason because we are operating still in a largely uncertain regulatory framework for in silico trials in particular, and we are very worried that we might end up into a fragmented regulatory landscape where FDA, EMA, and other authorities across the world have substantially different approaches to the use of modeling and simulation. So for all this good reason, we thought that driving a GSP initiative was important. Also, definitely not least, because defining what is a good simulation practice is far from being a trivial task from a technical point of view. So we thought that this had to be done, at least to some extent, as a grassroots initiative where every stakeholder, every expert who was willing to participate would be welcome. Essentially, the idea is to work around three actions. The first is to generate a series of elements that could enter eventually in this GSP guidelines from a technical point of view. The second is to engage with at least some of the regulatory agency, the major one like EMA or FDA, to co-design as far as possible this good simulation practices. Okay, and then eventually consolidate this work into a standardization initiative, for example, with a body like the ICH, which is the body in charge, for example, of the good clinical practice. Okay, so where we are with all this. So as I said, we started in January, so it's about a year we're working. And the first thing we did was to promote this grassroots discussion. And to do this, we used an online community of practice that we established about that time called In Silico World. If you're not a member yet, please join. You just send an email to info@insilico.org, possibly specifying that you're interested in the good simulation practice, and the community manager will add you to the community, and you will have access to the discussion channel, which is based on Slack, which is a fairly popular technology for this type of activities. The group that is already established there has worked so far on 2 documents. The first, we did a systematic analysis of all possible context of use for in silico trial technologies. A context of use is how do you use a new method in the regulatory process, okay? And the list that came out is surprisingly long, to the point that we are now working to make it a position paper and make it public, because we think this is a very interesting resource. The second thing we did, we started to work at a draft index for what could become what is technically known as a green paper. A green paper is usually public documents that prepare and to some extent influence a new policy that can be a regulatory document, a technical standard, or a law, or something like this. Okay. This draft index has been discussed with a number of experts within a regulatory agency, and we feel that we are now ready to start to fill in and transform the index into a full-scale green paper. So from January 2021, we restarted the GSP initiative. So on one hand, we are starting the technical discussion on the content of every single chapter of the green paper on the in silico World Community of Practice. So if you're interested of either listening or contributing to anything about the GSP, please join in Silico World and the Good Simulation Practice channel, and you'll be part of it. In parallel, we have reconstituted the so-called GSP task force, which is chaired by Luca Emili and myself. This is a formal body open only to members of the Avicenna Alliance and the VPH Institute that will act as a formal institutional connection between the community and the various institutional stakeholders, first among the other, the regulatory agencies. Next slide. A word about the context of use. The structure we use is this. So we use the classic reduce, refine, and replace paradigm that was introduced for the so-called non-animal alternatives. So the possibility to use other methods to replace animal experimentation. But we extended it to the entire spectrum. So there are context of use for in silico trials that can reduce preclinical in vitro experiment, refine preclinical animal experiment, or even replace clinical human experiments. Okay. If you want to see the full document, again, join the in silico World community, and we'll be happy to give you access to the full document. Next slide. This is the draft index to the green paper. I don't have the time to go into any detail here, but just for your curiosity, it is a pretty extensive document. There will be a lot of work that requires here to inform such an ambitious document, and we are starting now. So if you want to participate into this, please join in the next few days and week, because the work is being initiated right now. Next slide. Meanwhile, what is happening on the formal side? Well, the ICH, which is the International Council for Harmonization of the Technical Requirement for Pharmaceutical for Human Use, very long name, but we all know it as ICH, which is this international standardization harmonization body to which all major regulatory agencies participate, has started to think about the use of modeling and simulation. But as far as we understand, the orientation is more to work on specific existing ICH document and bring in some modeling aspect into that, than rather working on a comprehensive document. And that's good news, because it gives us the possibility to work and prepare an excellent green paper that then could provide the basis for a future ICH standardization initiative. Okay, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marco. And at this point, I'd like to remind everyone with not only joining the in silico world and the task force itself, or contributing to the development of the green paper, but also more globally, if some of you are interested in joining the policy development working group and or one of the task forces that we described, then thank you for contributing to our achievements. We'll be more than happy to welcome you and to use your forces and your knowledge for the benefit of the Alliance and ultimately for the patients themselves. So you have the email addresses of my colleagues Cécile Rousseau and myself. We are leading the development working group. Thank you all, and I look forward to working with you towards one day complementing and or replacing in vivo data with in silico data in submission to a regulatory agency that would allow to measure the risk-benefit ratio and to evaluate the risk-benefit ratio and to approve this drug. So thank you.
Thank you, Cécile. Emmanuel, I'm so sorry. Also, Martina will, at the end of the meeting, again, remind everybody of contact details and details on how to get involved in the different working groups. So in the meantime, the slides are up for Marcus, and Marcus, he will explain us everything about the international working group.
So hello and welcome. My name is Marcus Reiter. I've been leading the international working group for quite some time, since the initiation of the Avicenna Alliance. And I sit in Minneapolis working for Medtronic in the corporate research lab. So I think everybody of you is aware that when we change the projection of the world map from the sphere into 2Ds, then we need to make some kind of adjustments, and typically we try to keep the angles correct because that happened to be a benefit for navigating. But you could choose any other kind of adjustment to flatten out the Earth on a piece of paper. And I really love this map here because it shows the countries adjusted to the size of the population. So why do I have this here? To point out that although the companies that produce medical devices, and a lot of the pharmas, not counting genericas in, they're located in the United States and the European Union. But if we look at it from a market perspective, we need to look at the whole world. And if we think how expensive the development of a new permanently implantable medical device or a drug is, then you definitely need to look at the whole world as your market. And here on the right side, you see some interesting facts. Obviously, US and EU is only 10% of the population on the world, but also India has about 400 million people with healthcare insurance, which is nearly as much as people live in the European Union. And as the socioeconomic standard rises, people have more and more expectation for healthcare. So we can expect what's developing markets now to become mature markets in the future. So that's just a hint of why it's so important to look at in silico medicine with a global perspective. Here are the key things that the International Affairs Working Group is trying to accomplish. We want to engage with regulatory authorities and policymakers around the world, educate international actors about in silico technologies and its benefit, promote global harmonization of the in silico regulatory practices, and communicate the process to use in silico results to streamline local regulatory approval. So it's really important that we have a common global approach on the acceptance of in silico evidence, because it doesn't really help too much from a perspective of a large medical device company like Medtronic if you have one set of rules in the US, another set of rules in the European Union, and then somewhere in Asia you ask to repeat a human clinical trial anyway. So we need to come to the same kind of understanding. What are the objectives of the International Working Group? Promote predictive medicine and in silico trials, increase confidence and acceptance in silico evidence, develop objective and practical standards, and the emphasis is here really on practical standards, and that's why the input both from academics and from industry researchers and physicians is so important. The goals are to facilitate a dialogue in silico with the regulators around the world, and not only looking at the US and Europe, but also to Asia and Australia. The priorities for 2021, identify strategic contacts and implement the outreach plan, participate in international events, plan and organize some local events, and support the international activities for the Good Simulation Practices Task Force and community. Thierry has already shown another version of that same slide. So we are in contact and in constant dialogue with authorities and lawmakers in the US and in Europe. And this view that the Avicenna Alliance is an important partner is not only that we share to the outside, but it's really nice to see that a staff scientist at the FDA, Pras, who works on computer modeling and simulation and also showed the partnership between the FDA and the Avicenna Alliance, and then in combination with the VPH, as one of the achievements in the area of in silico technology. So this appreciation is mutual. And then I would like to point out that we are not only interacting with the US FDA. Obviously, it's our strongest partnership. We also have a formal agreement of mutual understanding with them. They are especially also essential thought leaders for in silico trials and in silico evidence. And we interact with the FDA researchers in the creation of standards. And we have co-organized events in the past, and we had mutual visits. There were also engagements in China, specifically with the China Medical Technology Testing Center in Shanghai, which is a little bit similar to a notified body, but it's a state-run agency. So although NMPA is the equivalent to the FDA, they don't really do the device assessment. So they farmed it out to CMTC. So we had a visit there and presented in silico trials. Also gave a training on V&V at the Design for Medical Devices conference in Shanghai in 19 in the fall. We started a dialogue with TGA in Australia and had several meetings with MTP Connect, which is a medical device incubator sponsored by the Australian government. We had 2 meetings in Korea in the framework of a conference, but then also individual meetings with the Korean regulators. And in Japan, we presented the concept of in silico trials, not directly to PMDA because they don't interact really with outside of submissions, but we had a meeting with the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, and also with Japan's very mighty MITI, which is the Ministry for International Trade and Industry. So they set a lot of the industry policies there. So how do we realize that, and what's the biggest task force right now, the biggest initiative that we have going right now? So together with colleagues Mark Horner and Cécile Rousseau, we have been working on a global harmonization white paper, which will be the foundation for the outreach to the regulators. Because if you want to introduce them to a topic, you need to be able to explain what you actually do and what you want. Initially, we wanted to submit the proposal for an IMDRF work item, but after talking with people who are active in IMDRF and government affairs people in different companies, the thought was it's very unlikely to actually get such a work item launched because of urgent issues like device safety and security, and then when COVID struck. So rather than proposing a formal submission, we want to reach out to the members of IMDRF and introduce them to our concept and to the white paper, and then engage them in a dialogue and see that we make progress that way. And you see the timeline laid out here below. I'm nearly done with the 2020 tasks to publish the white paper. We are now in the review phase, so that should be done in about 3 weeks, and then we can publish that and then move over to 2021. And that leaves me to talk about the last slide. So you may wonder, what's the role of academic members in the international working groups? In fact, we need you. We need you for the development of technical contact and also to establish connections to academic researchers in the target countries. But I hope that this is not a one-sided approach where we say from the international working group perspective, we need academic participation. I think you'll find it also rewarding and interesting to work with us. You get good perspectives from what drives innovation from an industrial perspective, and I think more dialogue between industry researchers and academic researchers helps with the ability to translate your research into practice, and I think that that's a topic which most researchers value very much. So that was my contribution for today. If you want to reach out to me, I think you can find my email address on the Avicenna webpage, and otherwise I think in the summary that will be sent out here. And I'll turn it back to Lise.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And now from the international working group, which is heavily on the policy, which are maybe towards the end of the spectrum that a lot of scientists are less familiar with, we go to the part of that we are more familiar with, and Jérôme will present all the student committee activities.
So thank you, Lise. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So yes, as is commented, so let's move to a slightly different topic, not less important, basically. This is a committee for in silico medicine training. So basically, student committee and the awards committee that mostly targets students. So why it is important? Because I found this quote on the web that I think very nicely illustrates the vision, is that the future is our present for the next generation. So all what we are doing now, so all the efforts that have been presented by my colleagues up to now are actually preparing a better landscape, so for the next generation, both of scientists and industrials in the healthcare technology. This is what we believe. So I think as a scientific society, we also have, we should feel a sense of duty, so towards the proper training and then the proper preparation of the newest generation. So according to all this work that is being done right now by senior scientists, and then so that people can take over later. So the VPHi committee aims to promote the VPHi as a community and the career development of VPHi early scientists. It aims to highlight excellence, because excellence is actually visibility within the VPHi, and then provide student members with level of quality. And for this, we use different connections and awards. And we also need to promote early collaboration. So one important aim is to favor scientific interactions and mentorship among junior and senior and across the different VPHi disciplines. So scientifically speaking, the VPHi focuses on computer models and then simulations, but actually there is a wealth of different applications. And as we've seen, in the AI in silico task force, there is a wealth of different approaches. So actually, it's community that is extremely rich in terms of disciplines, and people need to be aware of that and aware how to combine things together. A bit of history. In September 2014, The committee didn't exist, but we recognized that student activity had to be organized, and this was done at the VPH conference in 2014, which was the second large VPH event. And then in March 2015, so we formally created the committee. In September, the first activity was launched, which was a VPHi keynote webinars. 2016, a second important activity was launched, the VPH Summer School. In 2018, we created the awards program, and in 2019, so most recently, we then opened the activity to other communities. So here specifically the European Society of Biomechanics. So the VPHi Student Committee is composed by 2 senior chairs. We're basically Martina, who mostly cares and takes over the management coordination duties of the committee. Myself, I'm acting more on the scientific side, and then we have a very important team of early researchers. So there is a turnover of 2 years of the member. So now we have actually an outgoing group of early researchers. So Alessia, Mai, Nima, and Ben. And so I seize the opportunity to thank them very much for their efforts in the 2 last years. And I also seize the opportunity to welcome now the new committee that has been actually formally appointed last week. Christian Mojaba, Robin, Satanik, Timothy, and Zeynep. So thank you guys, and we're looking forward to develop things together in the next 2 years. So the activities are the VPHi keynote webinar series, that we talk about it, VPHi awards, VPH personal summer school, and mentoring events at the VPH conference and workshops too. So we want to approach highly experienced researchers active in the VPH away from crowded and basic scientific events to the VPHi keynote webinars. We also want to provide researchers who are consolidating their independent scientific career with further dissemination means. So we have typically 3 to 4 own keynote webinars per year, and we have also co-organized webinars with the ESB. This is an example of the webinars that we had recently, and we will have our next webinar in February 24th, 2020. In general, we have up to more than 100 attendees and several hundreds of visualizations through YouTube. So nice impact. You can find all the information on this website. If you want to be a speaker, and feel free to reach us. So it's always nice and to have people volunteering to have a webinar. And if you want to organize, of course, then you can join the VPHi Student Committee. So we have formal calls for that. VPH Summer School. So it's typically organized every year. The 2020 editions has been postponed to 2021 because of COVID. And it provides junior engineers, early researchers, medical doctors with integrative and practical view of state-of-the-art research in silico medicine, from basic science, clinical needs to model application. So this is how it is organized. So in the morning, we have plenary talks, and it lasts 1 week. And then during the week, we have an evolution from basic science, clinical understanding to eventual applications, medical applications, industry applications. And then we go through all the different steps of data acquisition, model developments at different scales, and implementation, etc. So this year, the event will be online, which is nice because it allows reducing considerably the registration fees. We have also less limitations on the number of students that we can welcome in the hands-on, so that's nice. So we typically have 14 international keynote speakers, 1 VPH honorary lecturer. This year we will have the best PhD thesis awards presentation, more than 14 hours of guided hands-ons, 4 poster sessions, 1 poster competition, and 2 workshops. So training is generally high quality as it is combined with Marie Sklodowska-Curie innovative training networks. So in the past was ITN projects, cardio function peak, and right now is a new one which is called This for All. And we have also interactions regularly with CombBiomed from methodological point of view. This is an overview of the hands-on, so you can see the different thematics, patient multi-scale modeling, patient-specific modeling, computational fluid dynamics, geometrical modeling, machine learning with patient stratification, and computational systems biology. So it's very wide. So now I'm moving then to the last activity I wanted to talk about, which are the awards. So we have the best VPHi thesis awards in silico medicine and the best VPHi in silico trials awards in silico medicine with applications in industrial R&D. So we assess capacity or knowledge gap, methodological approach, research outputs, international integration. For the application in industrial R&D, so we also assess translational aspect. And we're not obligatorily targeting technologies that are already in use. So new technologies are actually very welcome yeah. And so there's 1,000 money prize certificate, then plenary talk at VPH conference or VPH summer school. Then we have the best VPHi student award, which is recognition of excellence. So for the abstracts that have been submitted, and then also excellence of the presentation, 500 euros prize money, certificate, plenary talk at the VPH conference, and the best VPHi poster award, which is delivered at the VPH summer school. So I've put here the 2021 calls. So we will have then the best VPHi thesis awards in silico medicine. The call is already out, so you can use this QR code to go to the call web page. The best PhD thesis award with application in R&D. So the call will be released soon. So stay tuned. And best VPHi poster award. So actually the call closes with the registration to the VPHi summer school. So by the end of May. And yeah, so I think that hope that I have given you a good overview of the activities of the committee.
Thank you very much, Jérôme. And then last but definitely not least, we give the floor to the rock upon which the VPH Institute is built. And Martina will explain you everything about communication and engagement of the Institute itself.
Thank you, Liz, for the nice introduction. Okay, and I actually would like also to thank all the people that have joined today. We were really happy for the large participation, and hopefully we will try to do similar activities in the future again. So the VPH Institute, some of you have been with us for a very long time. Actually, the VPHi was incorporated 10 years ago. This is actually a nice anniversary for us. And some of the people that have connected to the webinar today are new to the VPHi and might want to know something more about who we are and what we do. So I will start very briefly presenting you the structure. So the base of our organization is actually the General Assembly that is composed by the different membership categories. The General Assembly elects the Board of Directors once a year and the Board of Trustees every 2 years that mainly have a supervision role. Then the Board of Directors appoints the Executive Director and myself, the manager. There in the middle, and my role is actually to take care of the daily management of the VPH Institutes and the communication activities. So for any questions, doubts, any information that you would like to know on the membership, on the engagement, feel free to contact me. In regards to the membership, because even today some of you asked me to have some more information about it, these are actually the membership categories that we have available. They're actually split into two main different types: the institutional one, which are the ordinary and the supporting membership, and the personal one and the students. For what regards the institutional ones, actually the VPHi benefits can be claimed by all the employees of the member organizations. So we have got different type of offers, and if you're interested to know what's the best membership type for your own case, and you're interested to join, please feel free again to get in touch with me. Communication. It's one of the most important activities of the VPH Institute, because it actually supports all the other activities that we do. The communication is actually divided into two main groups: the internal communication and the external communications, that also has a different target group. Over the 10 years since its incorporation, the VPHi has built and created a number of communication channels. We have the VPHi newsletter that reaches quite a large audience of unique contacts related to the in silico medicine world. It's actually sent out on a monthly basis, and all of you can request and suggest items to be redistributed through the VPHi newsletter that you believe could be of interest for the in silico medicine community, talking about achievements, success stories, job posts, events, anything that you think relevant. So the deadline for the contribution is always at the end of the month, and you can send your suggestion to be included in the newsletter without any problems. Actually, we advise you to do that. Your contribution, even in this case, would be really important. We have the VPH Institute website. We have social media. We actually quite strong on Twitter with 1,400 followers, but we also are on LinkedIn and YouTube, where you can find all our videos. In regards to the social media, we are actually considering to expand our communication activities toward this direction, and soon we, as part also of the new project that have been funded by the European Commission, we will hire a new person to work alongside me to develop a social media strategy. And then we have webinars, as Jérôme just mentioned, events, and the production of general communication material and videos. So the main scope of the internal communication, just to give you some more details, is actually to keep the membership informed on everything we do, and especially in all the initiatives that you can benefit and participate in. And of course, take care also of all the formal requirements from our statute. The main channel that we use for the telecommunication is the members-only mailing list. And I really want to stress out this point because it's really important for us. So all personal members, as I mentioned before, are automatically included in the internal mailing list, because for signing up to the VPHi, you have to fill up a form from the website, and in compliance with the GDPR, you gave us the permission to include you in the internal mailing list. But there is a specific case in which we actually need your collaboration, because from our statute, for what concern institutional membership, and I'm talking about either supporting or ordinary members, we only need to collect the contacts of the single representative for that institution. But what we aim to do is actually to expand and create a direct communication channel also to all the people that are affiliated to the institutional member organizations, and that can actually benefit directly of the all the benefits that the VPH Institute makes available. So if you don't receive already the communication of the VPH Institute, but you belong to a member organization, I would ask your collaboration to go to our website and activate your account. The link is there. You just have to click on personal or student, depending on your status, of course. Select from the list the organization you actually belong to and fill up your data. So in this way, you will then be included in the membership mailing list. You will appear on the member list on the VPH Institute website, and you also have access to all the activities that we make available. So is something that you do once in a lifetime, unless you then change organization you work for. But it's really important to open a direct communication channel with us. For what regards the external communication, quite a lot has been said so far by the speakers we had today, but just let me stress the importance of actually open a communication channel with a different stakeholders group. The first one is the in silico medicine community, which also include, of course, our members, but in general, all the scientific community related to the in silico medicine fields. Our goal here is to increase the visibility, to get the community informed of everything that's happening in the in silico medicine world, and of course, have the possibility eventually to gain new members. This is mainly done by the monthly newsletter, but also in order to keep up with the task, we use all the channels that we have available. In order to better explain who we are and what we do, a very interesting video that we produced, and I would ask you all to have a look at, is this one that I've just taken a couple of screenshots of. As you can see here, we actually decided to give the voice not only to our members, but to the people that we collaborate with. Some of you might recognize Tina Morrison here from the FDA that we've been collaborating with for quite a few years now, and Thierry from ANSYS, the Avicenna Alliance. And in general, the idea was to let our testimonials speak for us and explain in their own words what the VPH Institute does and the initiative, the importance of the initiative that we take care of. So if you can spare like a couple of minutes, please go to our websites and have a look to this video, because I think it gives a very nice overview of what we do. Another target that we are focusing strongly recently, as Claudio already mentioned, is the clinical side of the community. There are clinicians, there are already members of the VPHi, and they have been helping for a very long time to develop in silico medicine technologies. But there is also another part of the clinical community that is still not aware of what in silico medicine is, and how it can actually improve their clinical practice. So again, our main goal here is to inform them on everything that's available, and also try to increase the level of engagement of the clinical side of the community that is still not part of the in silico medicine world. The channels that we use here again are surveys, white paper, and participation to events. Before I included, I posted in the chat the link to the survey that Claudio has presented before. So please help us with the distribution and help us to reach new clinicians, which is a really important task for us at this stage. Another stakeholders is composed by regulators, standardization body, policymaker in general, and as especially Liz and Emmanuel already mentioned, what we're trying to do here is to work towards the common goal of overcoming the barriers for the uptake of in silico medicine technology, and we try to do that as much as possible by increasing the collaboration with all these different stakeholder groups. Finally, another stakeholder group that we are concentrated on is patient and the society at large, which are actually the final user and the one that could benefit of the in silico medicine technologies to improve their lives indeed. Some of them are not aware of what in silico medicine is, so again, primarily our goal would be to inform, and by informing, we also want to increase the visibility and trust on in silico medicine techniques. So this is a really nice second video that we produced that explain in just 1.5 minutes what in silico medicine is, actually using the buzzword that the European Commission has been promoting quite a lot recently, which is digital twin. This is again something that I would suggest you all to have a look at, and also to potentially use it for your internal and external communication. To conclude, how can you engage with what the VPH Institute does? Well, first of all, if you're not a member yet, please join the VPH Institute. As you saw, we got different membership categories with different fees and different level of involvement. And I think there is space for all the people that actually want to contribute to our initiative to step in and be part of the VPH Institute. But once you are a member, if you're not yet, please make sure to stay tuned with everything we do. So please check your communication, follow us on social media, help us actually to distribute the information that we make available. Your collaboration would be really important, especially on the social media sites, and participate to our events. And final but not less important, all of you that actually raised an interest on the activities that were presented today can actually actively participate to the working group and the task forces that we have in collaboration with the Avicenna Alliance. Your collaboration, your expertise will really, really make the difference. So we very much encourage you to actually come on board. Here you can find the link for the call with the call of participation to the different working groups. You can just go there and fill up your data, and you will have the opportunity to be included in the different initiatives that we presented you today, which I just wanted to give you a very, very, very brief overview of. So we got the Research and Technology Working Group led by Liz, the Policy Development one led by Manuel, and the International Working Group led by Marcus. Considering that Liz opened up with this webinar with presenting the nice results that we had last year with the VPH 2020 conference, I couldn't think of a better way to conclude my presentation with giving you the details of the upcoming conference that we will have in Porto in September 2022. Please save the day. Hopefully we will have the possibility to meet face to face. If not, we will be considering to have either an hybrid event or again an online event as happened last year, thanks to area contribution. That's it from my side. Now it will follow a Q&A session. So as mentioned before, you can type in your question in the GoToWebinar question box. In case we run out of time, I just wanted to ensure you that we'll respond to any of the questions that we will receive. And again, I want to stress the importance to feel free to contact me if you have any information, any clarification, any question, any curiosities that you want to know about the VPH Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. And looking at the Q&A, I think we have been all very clear in explaining what we are doing. Very few questions are left. There is just one, and that I can take that even before reaching the top of the hour. That is one from Marlene, who asked, in the work done in the Policy Development Working Group in the Notified Bodies Task Force, whether there has been a mapping done on where in silico models can contribute in specific aspects of the new medical device regulation directive or regulation. And so that is exactly one of these things that we are doing in collaboration with the notified bodies. For now, they use this kind of in silico models, or they see that as an additional source of information. They're not yet being used as a replacement, as Emmanuel said, of the information that they would otherwise collect through in vitro or in vivo data. So that is one of the goals. If they get more confidence in silico methods, if the credibility or the proof of credibility becomes more robust, then they consider more and more shifting also the burden of evidence, or they can shift the use of in silico from being merely auxiliary information to actually being part of the core information. Is there something, Emmanuel, that I forgot to say there?
Yeah, it's very important to stress what you just said. And also, I wanted to add that there's more and more combos coming up from innovation. So it will be extremely interesting to see how this mapping can go into drugs and into, at the end of the day, the combo itself.
Yep. And there maybe I can take the opportunity of highlighting something that maybe wasn't clear from the EMA slide that Emmanuel presented. EMA really wants to have more interactions with academia, with industry, and exchange of expertise on how to look at certain elements of the credibility building process. And we are going to start a series of expertise exchange workshops, the first of which will be at the end of Q1 already this year, where we will talk about the use of in silico in drug-device combinations. So this will be a triple helix workshop, which will be open to everybody. There will be a few presenters, a few round tables, where we will specifically address indeed the topic of drug-device interaction. There is one more question from Stefan on how much participation does VPH have with private companies already developing physiological human simulations, models, and programs. Well, that is, I can, Thierry might complement there the answer I give, but that is exactly the point of the whole Avicenna Alliance, to formalize the interaction between VPHi and the industry working on the development of in silico models.
And I think that you said it properly, and we just want that to expand even further in the future. That's one of the reasons for this kind of meeting.
Thank you very much, Thierry. And I think with that, we have replied to all the questions. We're also 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. I would like to thank all the speakers for their very clear introductions, very timely, constant introductions. And I would like to thank all of the attendees who are we're still at 77, and that at 6 o'clock in the evening. So we are very happy that you were here, and we hope to see you soon in one of the task force or working groups or another VPH activity. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody.